Currently, across the whole of Europe, more than 700,000 people are homeless, giving an incredible increase of 70% in just the last 10 years. So, to resolve this, the European Parliament planned to end homelessness in Europe by 2030. But unfortunately, throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, homelessness numbers in the majority of Europe grew, except in Finland. This is no doubt a huge achievement for Finland, a discovery in fact, and it has raised eyebrows across the world. How did Finland find a solution to homelessness, and what can the rest of the world learn from it? Before we go into that, please subscribe to the channel and give this video a thumbs up. Between 2004 and 2008, the number of single homeless individuals in Finland was between 7,400 and 7,960. This was after this same number had been nearly halved in the previous decade. It was a case of retrogression, and so Finnish policymakers eagerly sought a solution. Soon they realized that the staircase approach had reached its maximum effectiveness, and a new strategy was needed if the rate of homelessness was going to reduce. Now, if you don't know what the staircase approach is, it is a system where a homeless person moves from one social rehabilitation step to another, with an apartment awaiting at the highest step, from a shelter to temporary accommodation before finally moving to long-term housing. Even though it doesn't look like a bad policy, it wasn't effective because, well, it requires that a homeless person get himself out of his mess before getting a home. For example, a homeless drug addict had to stop taking drugs and get a job before he can get an apartment. And if we're gonna be honest, this is not quite realistic. How many people who are living in good conditions struggle to get out of addiction? If it's difficult for them, imagine just how difficult it would be for homeless people with a little support they have. Impossible, right? This is what the Finnish experts thought. This made them dump the staircase approach for the housing first principle, where a person does not have to first change their life in order to earn the basic right to housing. But instead, housing is provided to give other problems room to be solved. So, Finland began to prioritize the housing-first approach and began providing housing immediately and without conditions to residents in need. The reason this is being done is that the underlying principle of housing first states that having a stable and secure home is a fundamental human right and a critical foundation for tackling other issues contributing to homelessness, such as mental health issues or substance abuse. And by prioritizing housing as the first step in addressing homelessness, Finland's government has successfully created a supportive environment for individuals to address other challenges. Now, listen to what some housing experts in Finland said. In the Housing First model, a dwelling is not a reward that a homeless person receives once their life is back on track. Instead, a dwelling is the foundation on which the rest of life is put together. A person who is homeless goes directly into a rental apartment, either an independent apartment or a unit in a supported housing development, and has the opportunity to choose services and supports. Also, staff in supported housing developments treat clients as equals and strive to build community. This is the secret that has transformed Finland. As part of Finland's commitment to the housing first approach, the government converted homeless shelters into housing units to create new housing stock with supportive services. This worked, and soon the number of shelter and hostel beds in Helsinki fell from 2,121 in 1985 to 52 in 2016. During the same period, the number of supportive housing units in the city grew from 127 to 1,309, and independent rental apartments for people formerly experiencing homelessness increased from 65 to 2,433. Another beautiful strategy Finland used was to scatter the sites. This means that Finland's government distributed public housing in sites throughout the city to encourage members of lower economic classes to mix with residents who were better off. It helped to successfully keep homeless Finnish people off the street, because they were now in safer neighborhoods that were closer to employment centers. The reason Finland is an excellent example of the housing first approach is because the country was an early adopter of the approach. From what we've seen, housing first ends an individual's homelessness by moving them quickly into independent and permanent homes, and then providing additional support and services as needed, and for as long as needed. The core and very simple principle being that people are better able to move forward with their lives if they are first housed. The system offers permanent, secure, non-time limited housing to people who are homeless, with ongoing, personal-centered support that isn't tied to some strict conditions. It ensures that at any point where people become homeless, it is rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. Oftentimes, people argue that moving from the staircase system to a housing first model is expensive. Well, even though it is true that upfront costs may be high, evidence shows that in the long term, housing first saves money. If you don't believe this, recent reports from Finland have shown that 15,000 euros is saved every year for every homeless person in properly supported housing, if the costs that would be otherwise incurred through emergency healthcare, social services and criminal justice involvement are considered. This has worked magic in Finland since 2008, when Housing First became a national policy, and to date, there are up to 3,000 Housing First units in Helsinki. The progress has been so remarkable that in 2020, the government made a commitment to continue working to a Housing First model with the aim to totally eradicate homelessness by 2027. Interestingly, the Finnish government has also supported and funded a number of Housing First programs and initiatives, including funding for housing construction and for support services. We cannot talk about the success of the implementation of Housing First in Finland without mentioning the Y Foundation. It is a non-profit social landlord and social enterprise, and a key champion and leading exponent of Housing First in Finland and across Europe. It established the Housing First Europe Hub, which provides training, research and support for organizations and countries interested in delivering housing first and moving to a housing-led homelessness system. As one of the largest social landlords in Finland, with approximately 18,500 apartments across 57 cities, the Y Foundation has no doubt played a leading role in a policy that is on target to end long-term homelessness in Finland. Interestingly, the foundation was also a gold winner of the World Habitat Awards in 2014, and its work is a key driver and inspiration behind World Habitat's European End Street Homelessness campaign. And to ensure there can be quick access to permanent housing for people experiencing homelessness, most of its homes are in central city locations, meaning that residents are able to be close to work opportunities. How can Finland's progress help other nations? When examining what lessons the rest of the world could derive from Finland's experience, it's important to understand that nations are in different sizes. Currently, Finland has an estimated total population of around 5,541,000, which is a lot smaller than that of New York City, for example, which is 8,622,000. Yet, in spite of the obvious size difference, the folks at Y Foundation still argue that the size of the United States is not what is stopping it from eradicating homelessness, but that instead, Finland has social programs that are simply more effective at reducing poverty than the United States and other nations of the world. Also, the city government of Helsinki owns 70% of the land in the city, which already simplifies the process of creating a large public housing system. Finland has no doubt redefined how nations can address homelessness by focusing on prevention, early intervention, and of course a great support system. It has shown the world that homelessness is a solvable problem. What do you think about the Finnish policies? Do let us know in the comments. Also, do like and subscribe if you haven't. Where money matters. See you on the next one.